This is Conversation of the Birds, a story set to music, new chapters released weekly, written, composed, and read by Jamie Holcomb. There is a rhythm in nature. Patterns are alive. I am sick. Many times along this journey, I have contracted some illness. Painful as the experience might be, I always emerge from the disease with new resolve. One is made strong through suffering. Or they die. In some way, always, the disease takes something from the person. How will you emerge from your transformative experience? Don't get me wrong, I don't believe this adventure will alter the course of your life. The parrot and the crow will never really agree with one another. That's not the point of their discussion. I set loose this variegated flock some time ago. I had been brooding on the concept for even longer. Many changes have taken place in the world around me, and quite gradually in my feeling towards that world. But I do not feel enlightened. At least I don't feel what one might imagine that word to evoke. Perhaps some of you feel that your feelings are a burden. There's a prescription for that. The heron and the cormorant are furious. The scissortail cannot stop complaining. The robin is quite worried, and the vulture regards all of them with a perpetual sneer carved into his beak by generations of cold, rational calculation. Well, I feel it here too as I consider him, the curl and flare of my nostrils, the severity of the vulture's contempt. What of it? Simply this: our birds will work together. They have come to some resolution. While their conflicts may persist, thanks to their mutual goal, the system prevails. Here they are, the 30 birds, some bats, and perhaps one ghostly whale included. The spirit of the flyer has prevailed. But out there in that wide world, laying in wait, there are still so many hidden monsters, and all the creatures of the earth who do not wish to find out, for real, what it's all about, like the queen of dogs and her vicious army, like the traitorous woodpecker, they will stop at nothing to conceal the truth. Of course, there really is a Smurg. What else? All throughout our history of time and space itself, from the moment of becoming into being, the forms have flown and crawled. They've squatted and climbed. They've wriggled and batted. The triceratops, the bull, the giraffe, and the flamingo. There are only so many ways in which one may navigate space, and sometimes somebody has taken to the sky. I know what you all must think of that. I can hear them now. All the various opinions in all their endless variety. Why do you respond to this in the way in which you do? Are you cognizant of the form of your own spirit? You laugh when you're afraid. I wish that I could say we're all friends here. Perhaps we are. Certain useless birds have been lost along the way. They were not meant to make it this far. There's the vulture's mask curling at one's beak. Well, to say what I've just said would be to validate the murderous intent of that devil himself. He is a form too, you know. It persists, as the boa constrictor once said. It is in you. How would we know we were wise unless others were ignorant? And that's just it. That's the trouble right there. Whole. The birds were presented with a wind-blown expanse of earth. Beyond this shallow decline, there rose the purple mountain, its snowy peak wreathed in black clouds. The seventh valley, the hoopoe said, breathless. The chill ran through him. All the birds huddled together against that icy blast. Coldest we've been, the dove said gently. The hoopoe could feel her warmth against his left side. How's your wing, he said, so close to her that his voice was a whisper. Better, she said. Shall we, said the hoopoe. Together, the hoopoe, the goose, the cormorant, and Habernanial and his bats, each of these 7 members of the flock found some portion of the kingfisher's apparatus to dismantle. They unfastened the straps at her breast. They removed the struts along her wing. They lifted and pulled that strange creation off the dove's soft wing. And you know, it was some time ago that a certain experience took place in my life that I have only just now realized to be relevant. My mother was a restless sleeper. Even with her earplugs and sleep mask, she still had much to complain about in the outside world. She particularly hated the birds. Outside her bedroom window stood the stone patio that overlooked our resplendent backyard. Yes, I grew up in a great house that my parents had designed together. They thought that a resplendent palace would prove something. They thought that they belonged together. The house was a garish mishmash of styles, full of unnecessary columns forged with gauche plaster, a poor imitation of some ancient temple. What a place. It grew up in the symbol of their confusion. The patio was lined with such columns that supported a wooden roof overrun with heavy rafters. At even intervals there hung a lantern, glass reminiscent of a Victorian lamppost, and all these marvelous nooks were attractive to the birds. It should have come as no surprise to anyone that a pair of doves decided to settle down in one of the rafters outside my mother's bedroom window. My father was long gone by this point. He had taken up with an Australian bimbo that he'd unearthed on one of his so-called business trips to California. We were left behind in Texas. And before I string out all the tawdry details of these people's lives, let me simply say that the doves, from my mother's point of perspective, were exceptionally irritating, so she devised a plan to get rid of them. It wasn't until one morning, when she came to me in great distress, that I learned about any of this drama with the doves. I was maybe 13. Why she came to me for help, I couldn't tell you. Apparently, my mother had sought to deter the doves from nesting near her. Thinking that they would find the material uncomfortable, my mother had lined the interior of each lantern with fly paper, the sheets of sticky substance designed to catch insects. Instead, she had caught the doves. I used sand. We had a sandbox for my baby sister. I used the sand to cover the fly paper so that as I pried free each feather, they would not get re-stuck to the substance. I pried free the wing of each dove. They were furious, or of course terrified. I pried free the female dove and off she flew, but the male, the father I should say, because they were nesting in the rafters, he was not so lucky. Either by his own struggling or by my efforts, that dove had ended up with a broken wing. We kept him in an old dog kennel. The dogs were very curious. We kept him in a kennel on the sofa in my father's study, a room which he had never ever used because as soon as the house was completed and he could no longer distract himself from his true feelings, his inevitable betrayal took place. He was a lawyer. That's what he always told us to say if anyone asked. He had a law degree, but he never really used it. That room was walled with bookshelves and filled with all kinds of leather-bound classics. Most were unopened until I climbed the shelves. Forever afterwards, that sofa, purple, floral-patterned, deeply hued, forever afterwards, that sofa smelled like dove piss. It's a deep, gamey odor. Nothing gets the smell out. Forever afterwards, the smell persisted. Because after some length of time, maybe 2 weeks or more, but eventually, after some time, we determined to let the dove go. His wife had been waiting for him all the while. We opened the dog kennel, out there on the patio, and with some small coaxing, the dove leapt free. In a wild flutter, he bounced up, to flap, to fall, twittering into the bushes. And that was the last we saw of the doves. I suppose my mother's trap had worked. And in all practicality, in all tender-heartedness, you will be asking, why didn't you call somebody? Animal control, a veterinarian. Why didn't you give the dove to somebody who knew what they were doing? The answer is obvious. For the same reason as the fly paper, for the same reason as the sand, for the same reason as that garish mansion and the Australian bimbo, as every crime against life. Because that wasn't what we felt like doing. I was a boy. I wanted to help. I've always liked birds. This has been Conversation of the Birds, a story set to music, with new chapters released weekly. Written, composed, and read by Jamie Holcomb. Produced by Supermoon. Join us next week for our next installment. If you'd like to check out more from Supermoon, visit us on TikTok or at our website, gosupermoon.com. That's GOSUPERMOON.com. The quest continues next week.